My name is Nelson Noss, and I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of the Ghost Guild, a registered nonprofit organization based in North Carolina. Although originally from Montreal, Canada, I've now lived in North Carolina for over 30 years. In my day job, I work in healthcare information technology, and more specifically in data and analytics for a large academic medical center in Chapel Hill.
And I'm Kelly McConkey, a Raleigh native and co-founder of the Ghost Guild. I work for a leading public research university in North Carolina as a licensed professional counselor and certified expressive arts therapist. I consider myself a social advocate, an activist, and a lover of the arts.
When we founded the Ghost Guild in 2017, we wanted to create a group that would mix our passion for history and historical places with unexplained activity. Our recipe includes stirring a pinch of education, a dash of folklore, and a spoonful of history while using a base of science. It's important for us to explore and learn, all while bringing attention to the preservation efforts of the unique sites we get to investigate.
Our relationship with Mordecai Historic Park is unique. As its exclusive paranormal research team, we investigate the park several times per year, and then on the last Saturday of October, we get to share our findings with you as part of the park's annual Haunted Festival. We normally present to a packed visitor center classroom, and it's for this reason that we've made the decision to present virtually for the second year in a row. The added benefit is that we get to bring the Haunted Festival to a much larger audience.
That said, we miss being able to interact face-to-face with the audience and hope to be able to return to that format again soon. Tonight's program will bring you a glimpse into the history, folklore, personal experiences, and some data from our investigations of Mordecai House, Andrew Johnson's birthplace, and St. Mark's Chapel, all located in Mordecai Historic Park. And this year, we're excited to be adding two new locations, the Borden building and Tucker House. Now, although both of these locations are not located in Mordecai Historic Park, they're also operated by Raleigh Parks Recreation and Cultural Resources.
As we proceed through tonight's program, you will get to meet some of our diverse team members. Just like us, all of our members are volunteers and hold professional daytime jobs. Although each one brings about a specific skill set, they all share at least one thing in common: a love for history, science, and the unexplained.
We're thrilled you decided to join us for tonight's Haunted Festival. Now let's get this program started by introducing you to the park.
We're very fortunate to have Mordecai Historic Park as a place to visit today, but not very many people know of how the park came to be. Well, that story starts in the early 1900s with a lady by the name of Patty Mordecai. Miss Patty, as she was often called, had managed the Mordecai property and taken care of the house by selling off parts of the property and reinvesting in local businesses and neighborhoods. Not having any children of her own, she decided to leave the property to her nephew, Burke Little. Now, Burke had lived in the house his entire life, and when his aunt agreed to leave him the property, she made him promise to never sell the house. Well, 1964 came around and Burke was in failing health. His family helped him move to a local nursing home and started conversations about what to do with the house, since at that time it was in pretty rough shape. By 1965, the Mordecai family had reached out to the Historic Sites Commission to begin talks about purchasing the Mordecai house and restoring it. Although it took several years and the efforts of preservationists and several prominent citizens, eventually in 1968, the City of Raleigh purchased the Mordecai house and the surrounding square. With this new addition to the city, talks quickly turned to what to do with several other historic buildings associated with Raleigh. The decision was made to turn Mordecai Square into Mordecai Historic Park, and to add the Andrew Johnson House, the Badger Iredell Law Office, the Post Office, the Allen Kitchen, and finally the St. Mark's Chapel to the property. In 1972, many of the citizens who were instrumental in saving the house formed the Mordecai Square Historical Society, later known as Capital Area Preservation, to manage and help preserve the property. The group also acquired collection pieces from the Mordecai family. And over the next several decades, the Mordecai house was filled with over 4,000 artifacts, many of which had once belonged to the Mordecais themselves. In 2005, the City of Raleigh's Parks and Recreation Department took over management of Mordecai Historic Park. Today, the park is one of 13 locations managed by the Historic Resources Museum program, which is a section within Raleigh's Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department. The most recent change to the park has been the addition of a visitor center, located across the street from the Mordecai house in the historic Bouchal Danielson house. It was the home of Mr. Danielson, who was a friend of the park for many years until his passing in 2011. Today, any tour of the property begins with visitors entering the Bouchal Danielson house and observing the permanent Mordecai exhibit before crossing the street. While the Mordecai Park has certainly changed in many ways over the years since the last Mordecai family member lived here, much effort and love has been put into the park to preserve the site for generations to come.
If people were asked about buildings where other people experience the strongest of emotions, a place where babies are baptized, weddings are performed, and funerals are held would make that list. Due to its age, St. Mark's Chapel would have been the life center for its home community, from dinners to singings. The church was the center of the social lives of the small town it was built in. It was also the center of the small town it moved to. Is it any wonder, then, that so much energy seems to linger in churches, with all this activity and all the emotions and all the life taking place around them? Step inside, and you might catch the faint sounds of an old hymn drifting out from the doors. Perhaps the specter of a former president could wander the aisles, like that is said to happen in National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. The only president buried there Woodrow Wilson supposedly taps his cane as he wanders the building. Or a ghost could appear in vintage clothes to wander the property nearby, like the tales reported at St. Paul's Episcopal in Key West. The cemetery next door to the property supposedly hosts someone from another time who seems a little restless. A ghostly choir might sing, like reported in St. Olaf, Texas, at the old rock church, which has been abandoned for many, many years. What can we find just under the hundreds of years soaked into the wood, below the layers of paint, where memories and tales of times past are yet to be told?
Built around 1847 by enslaved carpenters, this chapel once stood on John Hutton's plantation near a little town called Gulf, North Carolina. An Episcopal chapel, it served the Huttons, their neighbors, visitors, and the enslaved people living on the plantation. After John's death, his son Lawrence took over running the church and the congregation. About once a month, a minister from the nearby town of Pittsburgh would come out to lead it. The rest of the time, the congregation would have been led by the family themselves. Now that we're inside the chapel, let's talk a little bit about some of the architecture that we see in here. Inside this chapel, we have the original altar, podium, and the railings that go around the front of the church. And if you look closely at this railing, you can see it has an angle and a bend to it. This shape was made by taking the wood, soaking it, steaming it, and then clamping it into this bent shape. Now, once you took those clamps off, it would very quickly straighten into a straight line, so they had to install it almost immediately. You see the wood piece that's bent around the front of the altar? To make it get that shape, they cut little notches in it just to help with that bend some. And if you look closely, you can still see the original wooden pegs they used to nail the wood pieces down. If you look behind me, you can see the second floor balcony. That is where the enslaved people on the plantation would have either stood or kneeled during the service. In 1878, the chapel was deeded to the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina, but was used less and less. In the 1920s, however, a Reverend R.J. Shannon House decided to have a homecoming service in the chapel and raise money for renovations, including a new roof, paint, and wall repairs. While these repairs certainly helped the building itself, unfortunately the congregation was not permanently rebuilt and the chapel fell into disuse again until the 1950s. In 1953, it was decided that St. Mark's Chapel would be moved to Siler City, North Carolina. After it was disassembled and then reassembled in its new location, more repairs were made and a new congregation was established, which continued to use the chapel for the next 15 years. Unfortunately, after a few years of sitting around empty and falling into disrepair, the City of Raleigh's Historic Properties Commission gathered funds and gave the chapel a new and more permanent home here at Mordecai Historic Park in 1979. To get to its new home, the chapel was deconstructed and its steeple and roof were removed to be transported by truck to Raleigh. Today, St. Mark's Chapel is used for various programs such as historic shape note singing and can be toured along with the other historic buildings here on the property. If you'd like to learn more about the chapel or the history of the park, please feel free to come and take a tour.
We've been asked hundreds of times to analyze photos or video clips for what is presented to us as ghostly figures. In the vast majority of these cases, the pictures are examples of your brain's natural tendency to associate everything we see, touch, and smell with something already familiar. The scientific terms for this are matrixing or pareidolia, apophenia, or anthropomorphizing. Your mind interpreting what your eyes see based on what it already knows. Very handy when we are living in dark caves, but less handy when you're trying to analyze captured images. Coming in at a close second are pictures of orbs. Have you ever taken a picture and when you go back to look at it, there's a ball of light? Well, we have an example of this that was captured right here in this chapel. Did you see that in the back left of the chapel? Let's play that again. That's a fascinating clip. The fact is that we've recorded similar clips on practically every investigation we've conducted. We've seen orbs float over a person's head, move in straight lines, sometimes appear to follow someone around the room. We've even seen them go through walls. This topic unfortunately brings along a lot of controversy in the field, and we'll admit that not all orbs are alike. Trying to navigate the differences and what it might mean can be tricky. Now let's play a clip that was recorded that same night. Did you catch that? Let's see that again. There are many people who think that strange balls of light caught on still images or video are embodiments of the deceased. The truth is, the vast majority of orbs can be explained as dust, mold spores, pollen, water vapor, or rain, or just like this one, as bugs. There are things floating in the air all of the time that we just can't easily see. When you use the flash or other light source, that light reflects off these particles and is sometimes captured in your shot. This is called backscatter. Since particles very close to the camera are not in focus, they will appear blurred and will reflect the light more strongly than the more distant main subject of the shot. Don't just take our word for it. The next time you're at a movie theater, look up at the light coming from the movie projector and you'll see bright sparks floating around in the beam. In the same way, there are always dust particles floating around nearby when you take pictures or video with your camera. There is yet another explanation for orbs called lens flare. Lens flare is due to unwanted reflection between the layers of the camera lens's glass. It's mostly an effect that occurs when a strong source of light hits the lens and is scattered across the glass, ultimately appearing on your image. Flare takes many forms. It can look like radial streaks from the light source to rainbow circles or arcs. In other instances, light source can take on a glow much larger than their apparent size to the naked eye. Flare can also appear as bright spots, which is ironically referred to as ghosting. So, the next time you record a video or take a picture and see an orb or a strange shadowy face in the background, as excited as we would get for it to be a photo of someone from beyond the grave, it is more likely a simple technological mishap that can be easily explained.
By far, one of the most interesting experiences that we've had here in St. Mark's Chapel was one night when we had one of our former team members and the docent from Mordecai Historic Park standing all the way at the front of the church. It was a really quiet night, nothing was really happening, and they were getting a little frustrated, stir crazy, and that's when they started asking, do something, just do something. And they got this.
Just run into a pew for God's sake. It's your opportunity. Is that you?
The first thing they thought after hearing that sound was that someone's got to be out here trying to get into the church. So they rushed to the door and they opened them. There was no one out here. There was no one around the vicinity of the church. So one went back in, one stayed out here, and tried to open the doors to see if the sound signature was the same as what they had heard inside, but it didn't match. So then they thought maybe they'd heard a pew move somehow, and they started moving the pews to see if they can again get the same sound that they had heard, but nothing matched. Now, one thing we noticed on the clip, when you hear the sound, trying to eliminate the possibility again of someone being at the door and trying to open it, was that you don't see the doors move. And these doors actually do move a little bit when you try to grab the handles. We thought maybe it was just the camera that didn't pick up the movement. So on a future visit, we set up a camera on the same location, and we came back out and we moved the doors trying to open them. And on that clip, you actually see the doors moving when you hear the sound, which again, the sound signature doesn't match, but we still wanted to test that out. So the fact that we didn't see the doors move on that original clip, the sound didn't match, there was no one out here or around the perimeter, we've pretty much eliminated the possibility that someone was trying to get in. Well, on that exact same night where we tried to recreate the clip, we found something that we had completely missed. There was a table right in the entrance of the church. Now, the table is no longer there, but it was there that night. And we decided to push the table. And when we pushed the table, it wobbled back and then wobbled back in place. And that was the exact same sound that we heard that night. Now, could it have been that table being moved? Maybe. We have no proof, but it certainly is interesting.
Just run into a pew for God's sake. It's your opportunity. Thank you.
The United States has had 46 presidencies, and while each one is fascinating and rich with historical significance in its own right, few are as deeply controversial as that of Andrew Johnson. He became a tailor in Tennessee and married Eliza, who taught him to read and do math. He opened a business, eventually acquired property, and with it status, and all that led him to prosperity. His wealth and popularity in his adopted state of Tennessee helped him rise into the ranks of elected official. Eventually, he even found himself in D.C. His belief that the U.S. should stay together and his Southern roots caught Lincoln's eye, and Lincoln asked him to be part of the ticket in 1864 and to replace Hannibal Hamlin as his VP candidate, mostly as a way to try to bridge the divide with the Southern states. It makes an interesting tale, but because Johnson was not well liked, held some troubling beliefs, and made a few tragic miscalculations, he sealed his place in the story of the country. Just before Lincoln's inauguration in March of 1865, Johnson caught typhoid and, reportedly, in order to feel better during the ceremony, he drank several tumblers of whiskey to help fight the lingering effects of the fever. Unfortunately, this led to him slurring his words and being inebriated during the ceremony. He then delivered a belligerent speech filled with personal attacks and rambling incoherence. In fact, he called out the entire cabinet by name, with the exception of forgetting the name of the Secretary of the Navy, which he asked for in an exaggerated stage whisper style, just so he could rant on. After the scene, rumors ran rampant that Johnson had a drinking problem. The rumors, in fact, grew so bad that Lincoln himself had to address them. Meanwhile, near Ford's Theater, Mary Serrat ran a boarding house to keep her family afloat. Her younger son, John Serrat Jr., lived there with her and had been a courier for the Confederates. He befriended a local actor named John Wilkes Booth. The two had deep solidarity with their ideology, and soon they were meeting with a group and plotting to kidnap the president. That plan changed into something far more sinister than an already dangerous kidnapping after a speech by Lincoln enraged Booth. On April 14, 1865, John Wilkes Booth shot and killed Abraham Lincoln at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. But the plot was a further reaching conspiracy than even that heinous moment. Booth's co-conspirators were also plotting to kill Ulysses S. Grant, Secretary of State William Seward, and Vice President Andrew Johnson. Fate intervened. Grant's wife, Julia, didn't like Mary Todd Lincoln, so they had declined the theater invitation in order to visit their children in New Jersey. Seward was nearly stabbed to death at his home, but lived through the attack by Lewis Powell. Johnson's attacker, George Atzerodt, couldn't talk himself into it, and went for a walk instead. David Harold had helped Booth escape after he shot the president. It didn't take too long before Booth was tracked down in a tobacco drying barn in Virginia. The actor was driven from the barn when it was set on fire. He was shot in the neck and died several hours later before he could be returned for trial. Lewis Powell, George Atzerodt, and David Harold were captured, but not John Serrat Jr., who had been included in the plot. He had fled the country. As the military rounded up those involved, they also rounded up Mary Serrat, accusing her of knowing about the conspiracy. She was charged with aiding and abetting the conspiracists. A rushed and sensational trial followed. Mary said she was innocent at every step of the way, but despite pleas from her attorneys and promises of potential leniency, she wouldn't give up the location of her son. She was sentenced to death. Folklore says her daughter Anna banged on the White House doors while trying to plead with Johnson not to execute her mother, but she was stopped by guards and 2 senators. Eventually, Stephen Douglas's widow, also named Anna, spoke to Johnson on Anna Surratt's behalf, but he refused to stay Mary's sentence. On July 7, 1865, at 1 p.m., Mary was escorted past the gun crates that would serve as makeshift coffins and on to the gallows. Her fellow convicted conspirators were there on the platform as well. When she stopped walking, presumably due to the weight of her iron shackles and her fear at the sight of her coffin waiting nearby, she was carried to the platform. Her last words were, "Don't let me fall," as the floor beneath her fell. Mary Surratt became the first woman executed by the United States in an execution well covered and photographed by journalists. The high emotions of the Civil War, a drunken inauguration speech, an assassination, and a very public execution weren't all. Johnson's presidency continued to be filled with drama. He was booed out of town by a Cleveland crowd. He was met with an effigy hanging in Bloomington. After surviving an impeachment by 1 vote, he seemed to give up on working with Congress at all, especially after the purchase of Alaska during his administration became known as Seward's Folly. If, as some think, ghosts are created when deaths are violent, sudden, and emotional, this was a perfect recipe. But the paranormal stories seem to revolve around Mary and Anna. The story of Mary Surratt's ghost cover a lot of ground, from haunting the Capitol to the White House, but the most stories come from her final home and the place of her death, Fort McNair. It's said that the ground at Fort McNair smolders in a path 2 feet wide and 300 feet long, even in winter, from the last walk she took. Soldiers report that they can hear a woman crying at night. Guards and their families report screams of "help me" on Lincoln's birthday. There are reports that a woman's disembodied voice and a black-cloaked figure floats through the air with bound feet and hands. Honor guards report unusual occurrences of wailing with no one in sight during their duty at Fort McNair. Anna is also supposed to be heard weeping for mercy for her mother, or rapping frantically on the doors at the White House, particularly on July 6th. We may never know if it's Anna pounding on White House doors. We may never know why the snow melts along the path of her last walk. And we may never truly know if Mary was guilty or innocent, but we can safely bank on her involvement as the lingering presence in the story of a complicated man born in a simple home in Raleigh.
Probably one of the most famous buildings at Mordecai Historic Park is the birthplace of Andrew Johnson, the 17th President of the United States. Moved here in 1975, this building was originally located about a block away from the Capitol building in downtown Raleigh. We believe it served as a kitchen for a local tavern called Casso's Inn, which is one of the earliest inns in this new City of Raleigh, opening in 1795. Oral tradition suggests that Andrew Johnson's father and perhaps his mother worked for the inn, allowing them to live upstairs with Andrew and his older brother. Andrew Johnson was born in 1808 as the third child to a very poor family here in Raleigh. And unfortunately for Andrew, his father passed away when he was only 3 years old, leaving them even more destitute. But at the age of 14, his mother had him apprenticed to a tailor, a very common practice at the time. This meant that he would work without pay until the age of 21. However, he was provided with food, room, and board, and was taught an occupation that he could eventually use. However, within a few short years, Andrew grew restless with his situation, and he and his brother decided to run away. The tailor even put out a $10 reward for his capture and return. Eventually, Andrew ends up in Tennessee, where he opens up his own tailor shop. This is where he met and married his eventual wife, Eliza, who would teach him how to read and write. It was his wife that encouraged him to enter politics. He was elected mayor of his city, then elected to the House of Representatives, and then governor, and eventually Andrew Johnson became the senator from Tennessee. Soon after, the Civil War broke out, and Andrew Johnson was the only Southern senator to stay with the North when the South seceded. Even though he supported slavery, he was a staunch Unionist and didn't believe in breaking up the country. This really impressed Abraham Lincoln, and when time came for him to run for re-election, he chose Andrew Johnson, a Southerner, as his running mate in an attempt to bring the country back together. Unfortunately for everyone, a few weeks after starting his second term, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. And Andrew Johnson, a Southerner, became President of the United States immediately following the end of the Civil War. As you can imagine, this does not go over well in the country. The Northerners didn't trust him because he came from the South, and the Southerners didn't trust him because he sided with the North during the Civil War. Attacked on all sides, Andrew Johnson became our first president to ever be impeached in the United States. In the end, he was saved from being removed from office by one vote, and would finish out his term before returning to Tennessee. Unfortunately, Andrew Johnson is often not considered to be one of our most impressive presidents. However, we still claim him as our own. I think my favorite part of his story is about where he came from. One of the reasons that both he and Abraham Lincoln got along so well is that they really both came from nothing and rose to the highest position in our country. It just goes to show that truly anyone can become president. This is just one of the historic buildings that was moved to this location as the city was building out the historic park. If you'd like to learn more about his history, please feel free to come out and take a tour of the property.
One evening, while investigating the birthplace of Andrew Johnson, a former Ghost Guild member captured something interesting. While he was investigating the Andrew Johnson house, he had his spirit box going. The spirit box scans through radio stations. Now, you have to be cautious because you will pick up bits and pieces of radio station, and because of auditory pareidolia, your brain is going to automatically try to make sense of what you're hearing. Now, if someone asks a question and you get a response through the spirit box, you have to be very careful to not just assume that it's something paranormal coming through. Now, on this occasion, the response that he got to a question that was asked was enough syllables that it made us pause. You sometimes hear bits and clips, and you might be able to capture a word or two, but this was several words strung together with the same vocal tone and quality throughout the entire sentence. During the evening, when he played me this clip, the question was asked, "Were you ever alive?" As I listened to the response in the headphones, I heard a very specific response. But before I tell you what I heard, we want to play you that clip and see what you get from it.
Were you ever alive?
Let's play that clip one more time.
Were you ever alive?
Now that you've had the opportunity to listen to the clip a couple of times, feel free to comment below with what you think you heard. For myself, when I heard the question, "Were you ever alive?" the response I hear is, "Yeah, I was alive." Let's play it again. And now let's see if you hear what I heard.
Are you ever alive?
Are you ever alive?
Going back to our earlier conversation about audio pareidolia, the reason you might have heard what I just said now is because your brain, again, automatically is going to try to make sense of what the clip sounds like, and because I gave you a cue as to what I heard, your brain might automatically then hear that same response.
I'm standing in front of Andrew Johnson's birthplace, and we've had a few interesting things happen here. I spent an afternoon at the park before one of our investigations, and while I was there, someone mentioned in passing that they didn't want to enter the building by themselves because they felt a negative presence. When I found myself alone, sitting in there that night, I decided to bring up the subject in case anyone was there with me. I mentioned that this person had shared how they were afraid of them. Then I followed it by saying I was not afraid of them and asking if I should be. After our investigation, as I was driving back home, I started reviewing some of the audio. I was tired, but when I got to this part of the recording, I almost lost control of the car. Here's the audio. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not afraid of you. Should I be? So what did you hear? And out of curiosity, if you were reviewing audio and heard that, would you believe it was paranormal? Let's play it again. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not afraid of you. Should I be? Now that you've heard the clip, we want to stress the importance of tagging sounds that are heard during an investigation. Audio recorders that we use are very sensitive and easily amplify sounds, including ones you might not think that anyone's heard. Whether it be airplanes, motorcycles, animals, ambulances, people talking or whispering, movement of any kind, and bodily functions, literally any sound heard must be tagged. This tagging etiquette is crucial to reduce the likelihood of falsely interpreting those sounds as potentially paranormal in nature when we later review the audio. Let's listen now to an extended version of the clip. Because I can tell you right now, I'm not afraid of you. Should I be? Nelson stomach. Hopefully now you understand the importance of tagging and have learned how easy it is for faint stomach sounds to be interpreted as an unworldly response. I mentioned many occurrences in this building, and out of all of them, I'd say that the most interesting one is the one that we're about to share with you. When this occurred, we had 3 people inside the building. 2 former team members and the docent from Mordecai Historic Park. In the clip, you'll see that 2 are sitting on the floor and 1 is standing with a recorder in his hand. The video was captured by one of the stationary cameras that was in the corner of the building, whereas the audio was captured by a recorder that was left running during the entire session. What you'll see them doing during this clip is known by many as an Evp Burst, which is the process of using a recorder and asking a question, then waiting 30 seconds or so before playing the recording and see if it contains a response. You'll see the person that's standing play the recording, and then you'll hear him sigh because he's disappointed at the lack of a response. But then we hear something else. Take a listen to see if you hear it too. If you do, tell us what you hear in the comments.
What's your favorite thing in the world?
Did you hear it? Let's play it one more time.
What's your favorite thing in the world?
What we hear sounds like a female humming, and no one recalls hearing any humming at the time. That would explain why no one tagged it. We still don't know where exactly the sound came from. One thought was that it might have come from the exterior of the building. However, the ambient sound recorders that we placed outside didn't record it. The only recorder that captured it was inside the building. All right, one last time.
What's your favorite thing in the world?
Every time I've investigated the smokehouse on the Mordecai property, I have felt the presence of a man in the far back corner. The first couple of times I investigated, I could feel his fear, his uncertainty about who we were and why we were there. The more I have spent time with him in there, speaking to him, the more that fear has turned to curiosity. The last time our team investigated and I was alone in the smokehouse, I said my usual friendly hello, and I placed some equipment in that corner. I then moved to the other side of the space to give him some room. I spoke to him and played him music, and not only could I feel him there with me, but something started to trigger my equipment. And when I said my goodbyes and I went home that night, I had what I think was a dream. In the dream, I was asleep in my bed and I woke to see the man from the smokehouse. He was standing just outside of my bedroom closet. Now, he was not there to frighten me and he did not speak. He just simply watched as if he was curious himself as to how he came to be there. In the dream, I offered words of kindness and care, but I also explained that he could not stay, that I was glad he had visited, but that I hoped he might take this opportunity to move on. He nodded, and I immediately then woke up to the darkness of my room. I've often wondered, was it a dream? I'm looking forward to spending more time in that smokehouse and seeing if he's still there, or if perhaps he took my advice and he's moved on to a better place.
During one of our investigations, I was in the Andrew Johnson's birthplace when I heard what I can best describe as gravel being displaced. Upon making my way back to the house, I heard Jenny, another team member, speak about what she had just heard. She had been in the smokehouse doing an Evp session by herself when she heard heavy footsteps on the gravel coming from outside the door. Assuming it was a team member, she opened the door and looked around. There's nobody there.
It was then time for everyone to rotate to their next assigned location in the park, and my turn to spend time in the smokehouse. Now, after finding out what Nick and Jenny had heard, I purposely stood in this doorway with the door open, interested to see if I also could hear these footsteps. Well, after a few minutes, I did. The sound was coming from here, and although I could clearly hear what sounded like someone walking, I couldn't see anyone as I was making my way towards the sound. Now, although the cadence of the footsteps was what I would expect from a human adult, I did want to make sure that it wasn't a critter that was somehow responsible. So I pulled out our thermal camera to see if I could pick up some thermal heat signature of something that wasn't clearly visible. But I saw no such signature.
We still don't know what we heard that night, but one thing is for sure, we'll be paying close attention to this area of the park in our future investigations in hopes of solving this mystery.
It is hard to imagine what Fred Fletcher Park looked like at the turn of the century. Today, we are accustomed to the rhythmic footfalls of joggers and the scent of barbecues in the wind. But this landscape looked much different a century ago. Traces of the past are still tucked away in the park, taking the form of a lofty red brick building. Behind its walls, songs sing of decades long past. Whispers snake along the wooden staircase and spin tales of the children who once called this building home. It begs the question, what stories is the building trying to tell us? Let us now turn back the clock on the Borden building. On the 5th of June 1900, construction began on the first building at the Methodist Home for Children campus, or as we know it today, the Borden building. The occasion is punctuated by George Thaxton Jenkins, laying its first brick. Jenkins' father would later become the orphanage's first superintendent. This event marked the start of an impressive 5-month-long project, one that would culminate on Thanksgiving Day of 1900. The task of opening an orphanage was no small feat. Before that first brick was laid, a flurry of committee meetings and fundraising efforts preceded the building's construction. Newspapers reported that over $17,000 were raised in the 2 years leading up to the project, a staggering amount in today's currency. This estimate would later grow to $50,000 just a year after opening. Even then, the orphanage required additional resources. Requests for donations from the public were regularly circulated in the news. In one notable instance, Reverend J.W. Jenkins published a letter on October 18, 1900. The contents of his letter included requests for basic furnishings, mattresses, linens, and carpets, to name only a few. Reverend Jenkins went on to say that anyone wishing to furnish a bed or bed clothing can do so by sending us $15. We will have the name put on it, if so desired. Although funding presented a momentous challenge, efforts to fill beds were not. As construction continued on the orphanage, requirements for prospective children circulated throughout the state. On October 31, 1900, the North Carolina Christian Advocate published the conditions for admission. To be accepted at the home, children must be between 6 and 14 years old, and of sound mind and health as certified by a reputable physician. Once they were admitted, there was a deadline on when they aged out. Boys left the orphanage at 16 and the girls at 17. Children with or without families could apply. Applications came pouring in, and by the end of November, the home had secured its future tenants. The Methodist home was officially opened by Bishop H.C. Morrison on November 30th, 1900. In 5 short months, a crew of carpenters under the command of Charles Pearson, the building's designer, had constructed an orphanage that was revolutionary at its time. Pearson's house subverted the impersonal asylum-like aesthetic. Instead, his design successfully evoked a home-like ambiance. Records speak of 2 large dormitories, lavatories on both floors, a matron quarters, and polished pine to top it all off. Overcrowding also became an issue as the years progressed. On its 10th anniversary, the orphanage reported that 140 children were in residence. However, constraints on size and funding forced them to turn away prospective children every month. Overcrowding presented scores of problems, but perhaps the most salient of which was disease transmission. In 1918, an outbreak of influenza wreaked havoc on the orphanage, and nearly all children were infected. It is easy to make assumptions about the hardships encountered at the Methodist home. Movies and stories paint our imagination with somber scenes of orphanages. Often we forget that their history is also woven with moments of joy. During the influenza outbreak, a local benefactor provided the children with a moving picture show, a gift that no doubt brought smiles. Throughout the decades, the orphanage grew its sports programs. The Methodist home boasted its own baseball and basketball teams, which competed with local schools and clubs. These moments illuminate the complex history of the Borden building and others like it. They afford us a clear glimpse into the experiences and stories of the children who once inhabited its halls. The Borden building's time as part of the orphanage ended in 1979, when the Methodist Home for Children began to focus on community programs at youth homes throughout the state, instead of the campus-based approach. The City of Raleigh purchased the property that would become Fletcher Park in 1982. A decade later, in 1992, the Borden building was renovated and became the location of the Raleigh City Museum. Today, it remains standing at Fred Fletcher Park, hosting community events, summer camps, private parties, and weddings inside its gracious halls. Even so, its history and legacy as an orphanage have not been forgotten. A marker now stands to commemorate its nearly 80 years of operation on the property. The Methodist Home for Children still operates today, with offices close by the park as well as throughout the state, helping children and families alike. Children who once called the orphanage home, now grown, still meet on the grounds every year. Their stories, along with the stories of those that came before them, will always echo in the halls of the Borden building.
Raleigh is tucked between the mountains to the west and the sea to the east, centered on land as rich and old as the families that helped make this city the capital of the state of North Carolina. Local tales say that Joel Lane helped convince those in charge that they should buy his land instead of buying land closer to the Neuse River. The Neuse River would have given the city easier access to the sea and the shipping that came with it. But the planning committee met, large kegs were poured, over and over, as the talks continued. Lane footed the bill, and Raleigh became the first planned state capital in the U.S. In fact, many of Raleigh's historic buildings sit on what was once Lane's Wakefield plantation, including the Mordecai House. The house acquired the name Mordecai when Moses Mordecai married into the Lane family and took ownership. As a member of one of the oldest Jewish families in the U.S., Moses soon upended his family traditions and became a Christian, while also differentiating himself by changing the family name from Mordecai to Mordecai. While the Mordecai family faced many challenges during the time they owned the house, it's a more recent occupant that captures local imagination. Mary Willis Mordecai Turk was born in 1858 and died in 1937. She's buried near to the home she loved and lived in at Oakwood Cemetery. During her life as lady of the house, and as a lady of the day, she would have been tasked with housekeeping and entertaining. Large get-togethers on Sunday after service and during the holidays would have been her mission. She would have set the tone for the home, either pleasantly or not so pleasantly. The pressure of keeping a large and very old family home in good condition as the city grew and the surrounding world changed from horses and carriages to automobiles and trolleys would have been very challenging indeed. All of which, maintaining her family home, being in charge of entertaining, and charged with meticulous housekeeping, some might wager her life's work, may explain why she's routinely been reported playing piano in her prim black dress. Local historic guides talk about tour groups reporting a lady in period costume in the house. Some have seen just a swirl of mist and heard a pleasant tinkling of the keys. There were reports of doors opening and closing on their own, and pictures that will fall off the wall rather unceremoniously if you remark negatively on the property, curse, or otherwise act improperly in the house by turn-of-the-century standards. But why not see for yourself? Maybe next time you want to take a little trip to the land named for Sir Walter, you should swing by Mordecai House and see if the lady in gray welcomes you with some gentle piano tunes, or if she tells you to clean up your act with more startling antics.
Today at Mordecai Historic Park, we have many historic buildings. But did you know that the Mordecai House is the oldest home in Raleigh on its original foundation? The original portion of the home predates the city of Raleigh. Built in 1785 as a wedding gift for Henry and Polly Lane by Henry's father, Joel Lane, the home consisted of 4 rooms with 1.5 stories. 3 rooms would have been used as bedrooms, with 1 room used as a working, living, dining, and entertainment space. Joel Lane had already built his own house in 1769, further south in what would later become Raleigh, and moved here with his wife, Martha Hinton, and her 3 sons. Early on, he was instrumental in the creation of Wake County itself, even choosing the name. Joel Lane was involved in the Revolutionary War in North Carolina, and served as a delegate to the Provincial Congress in Hillsborough. Later, when the state needed a new capital, he sold a portion of his land to become the City of Raleigh in 1792. Today, he is known as the Father of Raleigh. Henry and Polly Lane had 4 daughters here: Peggy, Nancy, Harriet, and Temperance. And after losing their parents, the 4 daughters would move in with their relatives elsewhere in the area. But all would later return as adults when Peggy Lane married Moses Mordecai. Now Moses was the first Jewish man recorded to have lived in Raleigh. And once he lived in Raleigh, the pronunciation of the family name shifted from Mordecai to Mordecai. Now Moses and Peggy had 3 children before she sadly passed away in 1821. And a few years later, Moses would go on to marry another Lane daughter, Nancy, and had 1 daughter. When Moses passed away in 1824, he left money for Nancy and his half-brother, George Washington Mordecai, to expand the Mordecai House in 1826 into the Greek Revival style that you still see here today. The architect who worked on this extension was named William Nichols. He also remodeled the Capitol building downtown during the same time period. By the 1850s, the Mordecai House was the seat of a plantation that expanded to 1,200 acres, and up to 120 people were enslaved right here on the Mordecai property, some of which have recorded histories, interviews, and photos attributed to them. Mordecai Historic Park is committing to telling the stories of these men, women, and children. This includes stories of individuals such as Cheney, Charlotte, Millie, or Matilda, who cooked in the outdoor kitchen from dawn to dusk. By using these artifacts, the spaces themselves, and research and knowledge from their descendants, we can help bring their history to light. The Mordecai family lived in this house until 1964, and the house and the 3 acres that you see today were purchased by the City of Raleigh 4 years later. The park opened to the public in April of 1972, along with other historic buildings that moved here. With stories spanning over 235 years of both the Mordecai family and those enslaved, the Mordecai House offers a unique opportunity to see multiple centuries of Raleigh history in a single space. If you'd like to learn more about the Mordecai House or other historic buildings at the park, please feel free to come and take a tour.
Of all the experiences we've had on the Mordecai property, there is one in particular that we've been focusing on in hopes that we can eventually explain it, especially since several team members have shared a similar experience while alone in the house. The first time I experienced it was when I was sitting alone on the 2nd floor. The house was empty and all the doors were locked. The only person with a key was a volunteer who was on property that night, but not in the house. While sitting in Ellen's room, I heard the distinct noise of the door downstairs being unlocked, opened, and then someone coming inside. My first response was to jump up from where I was sitting and head out to the staircase, where I said, "Hello?" I was expecting the volunteer to answer me, but all I got was silence. I called out again and again, but still no response. My next thought was, Uh-oh, I must have left the door unlocked and someone has snuck into the house. I cautiously began creeping down the stairs, shining my flashlight into the darkness below. I didn't see anyone. I stopped about halfway down the staircase, trying to decide what to do. I'm not afraid of ghosts, but a random stranger breaking into a house where I'm alone in the dark, it gives me pause. As I slowly continued down the stairs, still cautiously looking around, I heard the same sound as before. Keys unlocking the side door, the door opening, but this time, the volunteer walked in. With a sigh of relief, I made my way down to her and I asked, "Did you start coming into the house about 5 minutes ago?" With a confused look on her face, she said, "No, I just walked straight over here from the church." I asked if the door had been locked when she got here, and she said it had. She also confirmed that she had not seen anyone outside on the property wandering around. I told her about my experience, and together we walked through the entire house just to ensure there was no one else there. We then tried to recreate the noise, opening different doors, drawers, manipulating different objects in the house. But that side door was the closest we could come to recreating the noise that I heard. The thing is, if this had been an isolated incident, we might have just dismissed it and moved on.
In our most recent investigation, our entire group was sitting on the floor upstairs in Ellen's room. The doors were locked and the lights were out. I was sitting in the bedroom doorway at the top of the stairs. I noticed the battery on my camera, which had 4 hours of life remaining before I went upstairs, had suddenly dropped down to 12 minutes. At the same time, another device that had just been fully charged died mid-use. That's when I heard, coming from the first floor, what sounded like one of the duffel bags we had on the floor of the side entrance. It sounded like it was being dragged across the floor. I could even hear the plastic buckles as he bounced off the small gaps in between the floorboards. We all made our way downstairs to investigate the sound, and were shocked to find the side door unlocked and wide open. Based on Kelly's prior experience, we had decided to focus audio and video on the side door, so we got really excited thinking that we had video of the door being opened and could see if someone had opened it, or if it had opened itself. Well, it turns out the camera had shut itself off. So we then retrieved the audio recorder that we had left close by, and its battery had completely drained. So there's no audio and no video capture of the door opening. Needless to say, we couldn't have been more disappointed. We'll continue focusing on this area of the house, but with more than one camera pointed at the door next time, including a new external camera we've acquired to have a view of the outside of the house.
So we had been coming twice a year, every year, to Mordecai Historic Park to investigate. And somehow we had never gotten into the basement. We never thought to ask, and it hadn't really been offered to us until this one time. The sitter for the house said, "Hey, have y'all actually done anything in the basement?" And George and I were the two people in the house at this point. The rest of the team were in the other buildings. So, you know, of course we're going to take whatever opportunity we have. So I said, you know, let's do it. And George was the fearless leader, ready to go right downstairs. So he went first and I was following. I was just a few steps behind him. And I got this horrible feeling of, we don't want you here. I mean, very strong sensation, just this isn't a good idea. So I stopped. I was about 4 steps down and I said, "George, we can't go down here." And he said, "What are you talking about? We're going down here." And I said, "No, they don't want us down here." And I backed up and went back to the top of the stairs. And something you need to know about us is we do everything in twos for 2 reasons. One is if somebody gets injured, you've got a buddy to go get help. And 2, if you have a personal experience, you've got somebody to witness it. So he goes down in front of me. I back up because I feel like this is not a good idea and they don't want us down there. He continues on. And as he gets just out of my sight, I hear a thump. And he says, "Whoa." And I said, "George, what happened?" I thought he tripped. He said, "Somebody just pushed me." And of course I got the "I told you so" moment. So he came back up the stairs and he's admitted maybe I was right, they didn't want us down there. Later on in the night, we took the entire team down there because obviously where there's activity, you do want to go and spend some time. So the entire team went down and we attempted to do an EVP session. We spent 15 to 20 minutes, and because the HVAC system was running and continuously loud, we didn't get anything out of that. But we did come back with a personal experience, and I truly believe that they don't want us in the basement.
When the Ghost Guild investigates at Mordecai, we typically try to mix things up. Each member will spend time alone in different buildings on the property, and then we will rotate throughout the evening. On other occasions, we may spend time together as a team in the different locations, trying experiments or working to debunk data we have gotten on previous investigations. One evening, while a former member was alone in the house, he described an experience that nearly knocked him off his feet. As he was making his way downstairs, he suddenly heard what he could only describe as the sound of someone running in the upstairs hallway, almost like that of a child running from room to room. The steps were so strong that he could feel the vibrations from where he was on the stair landing. It was the first time we've ever seen him rush outside at any location we've investigated. When he explained what he had just experienced, we joined him in the house in an attempt to find a way to recreate what he had heard. As the smallest member of the group, attempting to run in smaller child-sized steps, he said my recreation was the closest to what he had heard. Now, there have been many children at Mordecai. Do some continue to roam the hallways of the house? Or is this the residual noise of a memory from many years ago? The stone tape theory is the speculation that ghosts and hauntings are comparable to tape recordings, and that mental impressions during emotional events can be projected in the form of energy, recorded into items, and then replayed under certain conditions. Could it be that the walls and wood floors of Mordecai house the memories of events from long ago, and that, on occasion, that energy is released for us to witness? This is just another example of the types of questions we ask ourselves and seek to explore while investigating the Mordecai house.
I was alone in the Mordecai house performing an EVP session while standing on the second floor with my back to this window. During this session, I was attempting to recreate the legends that whenever unflattering things are said of Patty Mordecai, her picture gets toppled over. Although I never saw any movement in regards to her picture, I did capture the following. I only wish that the recording did it justice, because what I heard that night was loud. Here's the clip.
I don't know what that was, but I'm going to tag that.
Now, having heard the clip, feel free to comment what you heard. At the time, I was listening to my recorder in real time, so I don't know if these sounds were audible to the naked ear, but the fact that it was captured on both the video camera and my recorder leads me to believe that they were. Now let's play it a second time.
I don't know what that was, but I'm going to tag that.
So again, what did you hear? I hear two thuds followed by a voice, and the thuds even have some bass to them. Now from where I was standing, it sounded like it came from the base of the staircase. However, wanting to eliminate the possibility that these sounds came from outside, we reviewed our external ambient sound recorders. These are recorders that we strategically place around the park for this purpose, but none of the external recorders captured this sound. So this reinforces that the sound came from within the house. Now exactly what this capture represents is up for debate and would be purely speculative. Having heard it firsthand, the double thuds sound like someone being pushed to the ground from behind. First falling to their knees, the first thud, and then the rest of their body hitting the ground, the second thud. Now those sounds are followed by an angry voice ordering someone to get up. Knowing some of the plantation's history, could it be that I heard something residual in nature? Perhaps a point in time when an enslaved person was pushed to the ground and then ordered to get up? We might never know for sure, but it's an interesting thought.
Early on in our investigations of Mordecai Historic Park, we got a video anomaly. We were looking for video evidence of a phantom. Supposedly a woman walks down the stairs and through the hallway in front of the stairs, which are right on the other side of this door. So of course, what you want to do when you've got visual representations of hauntings is set up your video cameras. And in our case, we left the camera locked up running in the building. So there was nobody else in the building was locked, and the camera was running all night. And we actually caught what we would call an anomaly. So in the video clip you just watched, you saw the screen go dark twice. Now a lot of people would think that there's something wrong with the camera or the recording system or, you know, some sort of technical problem. Here's why we think this is actually an anomaly and not a technical issue. If the screen went white, we would know that the camera failed. If the signal was lost between the camera and the computer that was recording the video, you would get text on the screen that says the signal is lost. We didn't get a white screen, we didn't get text on the screen. The screen went dark and the time code continued to run. So what that tells us is that something blocked the light between the camera and the IR light on the other side of the hall. So something passed between the camera and the light, not once, but twice. To us, that's an anomaly.
My favorite personal experience from our time in the Mordecai house came one night when I was alone in the house. I spent some time downstairs checking out the different rooms, using my equipment to do some Evp sessions, asking questions, seeing if I would get any responses. While I was downstairs, I didn't get anything. As I ascended the staircase in the Mordecai house, a heavy feeling began growing over me. It got deeper and deeper as I moved up the stairs. When I got to the top, it stopped me in my tracks. It was a feeling of grief. Some people would call me an empath. My whole life, I've been able to sense the emotions of other people, both living and past. What's interesting about me is that those feelings often come with visual images in my mind. In this case, when I was stopped in my tracks at the top of the staircase, I was getting an image of a woman. She was wearing a long dress and she was crying. She was grieving the loss of a child. At the time, we were still new to the Mordecai house, and we were still in the process of digging into the history, so I didn't quite understand what these images were about. The feeling was so strong, though, that I had to leave. I went back downstairs, went outside, and just caught my breath. The assistant director of the Mordecai house was on property that night, so I went and found her, and I told her about my experience. She revealed to me that in fact there was a death of a child on the Mordecai property. At the age of 3, Moses Mordecai III died. He was being given a bath and the bath water was too hot. It scalded little Moses, which led to pneumonia. The grief I was feeling was that of Martha Mordecai. The interesting thing about this work is when we can put the history of the location together with the experiences that we have. When history speaks, we listen.
Although our use of the spirit box has diminished significantly over the last couple of years, we use the device frequently in our first investigations here at the park. This clip was recorded in our first year investigating the house. I was in Ellen's room and my time there was almost up. So I decided to ask the following question. Do you want me to stay or do you want me to leave this room? Let's play the clip, and if you hear a response, share it in the comments. Do you want me to stay or leave this room? Now remember, if you heard anything, write it in the comments. Let's play it once more. Do you want me to stay or leave this room? Now during this spirit box session, I heard what I believe to be a clear response to my question. Do you want me to stay or leave this room? Leave the room, and spoken with what sounds like proper English. All right, one last time. Do you want me to stay or leave this room? You've heard it multiple times now, so let me share with you why our use of the device has fallen out of favor. It's mostly because it's simply too prone to pareidolia. Have you ever looked up in the sky and seen familiar shapes in the clouds? Well, that's visual pareidolia. Audio pareidolia, on the other hand, is hearing words that are not actually in the sounds that you're hearing. This occurs by misinterpreting words that are being said or by hearing words in random noise. In auditory pareidolia, your brain searches for a recognized pattern. It finds the closest match and then processes the incoming sensory information to enhance the apparent match. Now, the spirit box is a very popular device, but it's important to keep pareidolia in mind if you choose to use one.
Born to Walter Scott and Mary Eleanor Hutchins Tucker in 1869, a young and ambitious Garland Scott Tucker began his furniture business in 1886 with his first G.S. Tucker and Company furniture store located here in Raleigh. In a few short years, he expanded his business to several cities before marrying Toller Moore of neighboring Tarboro. The first of their 4 children were born in 1904. And as you can imagine, with 4 children and an accessible business, it was time to consider living arrangements. Around 1915, the Tucker brothers had this neoclassical revival home built on Blount Street, at the time the most fashionable street for homes of the Raleigh elite. While the home was built by a firm in Washington, D.C., the architect was Raleigh native J.M. Kennedy. Despite the outside of the house being very reminiscent of an older time, the inside was quite modern, with a downstairs bath, 2 upstairs baths, a library, a reception hall, a radio room, a telephone room, and a sleeping porch. During this time, servants were a common feature in the residence of the wealthy, and the Tucker house offered a kitchen and dining room for them to wait on guests of the family attending the many formal teas and receptions the family hosted. Garland and Teller lived upstairs with their family, and Garland's bachelor brother, Celadon, lived downstairs. During the 1930s, when hardships were prevalent all over the country, their son, Garland Scott Tucker Jr., recalled that people would sometimes knock on the door looking for work. His mother, Mrs. Tucker, would ask if they had eaten. If they hadn't, she'd feed them. It was one night in the 1930s, in fact, that a fire broke out in the downstairs library while the family was sleeping upstairs. The fire was contained, but damaged the floors, which had to be replaced. Mr. Tucker passed away in 1949 and Mrs. Tucker in 1972. The City of Raleigh acquired the property after her passing and moved the house from its original location to its current home here on Pearson Street, where it can be rented for community events and gatherings.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. I know we've had the opportunity, Kelly and I at least, to introduce ourselves at the beginning of the program, but we do have other members of the team with us tonight that'll be participating in our Q&A that Kelly will be driving for us this evening. But we did want to give an opportunity for the team members to introduce themselves as well. So we'll go ahead and start, no particular order here, Michael. I'll let you go first.
Hey, my name is Michael. I shoot some of the video for the Ghost Guild and help investigate. So some of the video and edits that you saw were my fault. But yeah, oh my gosh, there's a kitty cat. But yeah, so that's who I am. That's what I do. So anything video related or all that fun stuff.
Perfect. Thank you. Mike. Yeah, let's put Nicholas on screen. Nicholas, you're muted.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Nick Wendling. I've been actively investigating paranormal activity since 2006, and I joined the Ghost Guild in 2019, and I'm one of the investigators.
All right. Thank you, Nicholas. Next, we'll be adding John to the mix.
Hey, I'm John. I'm with the Ghost Guild. I'm the science team lead, I guess, is my current role in the team. I really enjoy doing solving mysteries and things of that nature.
All right. Next, Christina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina. I'm the historical research assistant. I joined the Ghost Guild earlier this year.
All right, and I am not sure what happened to Tracy. There she is.
I'm still here. Hi, I'm Tracy, and I do part of the historical research for the Ghost Guild with Christina.
Thank you all. All right, Kelly, we'll switch it over to you.
So, welcome, everybody. We are excited to see you all jump in here tonight. It is a cold night here in Raleigh, but let's get started with our Q&A for the evening. First, we're going to go over some simple ground rules, and we will talk about some of our prizes that you have the opportunity to win tonight. All right, so okay, prize drawing. Winners will be drawn from participants who ask questions. So get in that comment section and ask us any questions you might have. Thing we ask is for you to add a cue at the beginning of the question so that we can, pick it out from random comments. But whether or not your question is answered does not affect your eligibility to win a prize. So if we get questions and we're not able to get to your question, you're still in the running for a prize. But we do ask that you stay present throughout this Q&A to win so that we can get your contact information at the end. So please stay on with us and ask some questions. Remember, this is a family-friendly event. I love how this is worded. We hate for bad language or risk themes to change you from troll to a ghost, but we'll kill your feed if we have to. So again, use a cue to start your questions, and that will help us differentiate the questions from other comments. But we are excited to get started. And if you want to ask a specific person a question, just add their name to the question. So for example, cue Kelly, and then your question. And I see we've already got some questions here in the thread. So let's choose a question to get started. All right. Nelson, choose me a question from our comment feed. All right. What's the weirdest thing you have seen or experienced? What's the weirdest thing you've seen or experienced? So we're going to bring all of our investigators on screen. And let's start with Nick. Nick, what's the weirdest thing you have seen or experienced?
Is this at Mordecai or anywhere?
Let's go with anywhere.
Anywhere was the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. To keep it short, I was basically walked through a room with a partner of mine. We felt something really weird, so we stopped, started asking questions, and this piece of equipment I was experimenting with, was actually making noises. I asked, "Are you here? Is anybody here?" It would go off. I said, "Okay, I don't believe that. Do it again." It did it again. And then a few seconds later, I said, "Okay, we're leaving. Is there anything else you want to do?" And I had a big flash of white light, just boom, right over my left shoulder. And I thought it was my flashlight. I thought it was her flashlight, and her flashlight was in her pocket. That's the cliff notes of that, but that's probably one of the craziest things that I've seen so far.
Very cool. All right, next question. What local location have you found to have the highest amount of paranormal activity? Nelson. Oh, we got Nick raising his hand on this one.
You can't steal them all, Nick.
No, sorry, go ahead, Nelson.
No, actually, go for it. You have an answer ready for that one, so go for it.
It's ready.
It's actually in the Raleigh area. The first place I ever investigated back in 2006 to this day produced probably, if I were to rank the top 5 EVPs I've ever collected, I think 4 of them came from this one location to this day. And I've done well over 100 investigations. It is a private farm just outside of Raleigh. It's kind of near Zebulon, Roseville area. Unfortunately, I don't have access. Well, could be near there. I can't say exactly where it is, though, because it's a private residence.
All right. So question, have you ever had an experience that made you feel unsafe? I'm going to jump in on this one. So we were at the New Brunswick Heritage Museum in Maryland, and Nelson earlier in the night had heard a hiss on the staircase and some thuds. And the girls that were on this investigation went up to the 4th floor of this building, which was like a men's only area back in the day. And as we were coming back down the stairs, we get to this landing, the 2nd floor landing, where Nelson had captured this hiss. And I felt what I can describe as like a very intimidating male presence just hovering right behind me. And it was so intense that I stopped and told the other girls to keep going so that I could just stay by myself and feel what this was and try to figure out what was going on. And they left, and I turned around, and it felt like this male. And all of a sudden, in my ear, I got, ugh! And I just was like, all right, I'm going. And I walked down the stairs, and I got to Nelson, and I was like, dude, like, oh, that one got me. That one made me feel pretty unsafe. But yeah.
I was chased by
Let's do
bobcats
one
on the Atlanta plantation. That's probably the most unsafe I've ever felt. But that's another story. Next.
And sometimes it's not the spirits that make you feel unsafe. Nelson, let's do one more question, and then let's do our first prize of the night. All right. So, do smoke alarms or other alarms go off during investigations? Anyone on this? I'm going to open this to anyone on the team. Has anyone had alarms or smoke alarms go off during an investigation?
I was just going to say, when we were at the Grand Old Lady, there were those like air fresheners mounted on the wall that would that were on a timer that would just be like, psst, and like spit out air freshener like every 5 to 10 minutes. And that once we figured out what it was, we were like, oh, okay, I understand. But sometimes you just hear like psst in your ear and you're like, what is that? So that was weird. But once you figure out what it is, it's fine.
We've specifically to Mordecai, those alarms are notorious for going off. But it's not only when we're there investigating. I mean, we've been investigating there before, and all of a sudden, the cops show up. Raleigh police are there because the alarm in the chapel went off. But it's not. I mean, it's not necessarily anything. I mean, we don't think it's paranormal in nature. Sometimes the alarms just are faulty and just go off. But that's the only place I'm aware of where we've been that tends to happen rather frequently.
All right, let's do our first prize of the night. So just to let you know how we're doing this, John, who's kind of our tech guru, has a random generator, and he is taking the names of everyone who is asking questions in the chat, and he is putting the names into the random generator. And so he is going to run the generator, and it's going to pop out a name for us. So John, can you give us the name of our first prize winner? And before you do, let me tell you what the first prize is. Nelson, do we have a pop-up for this?
You need my help for that?
Yes. All right. So the first prize of the night, it is written by a dear friend of ours. If you watched the program tonight, you will have seen her present some of our pieces. It is the Tritium Hypothesis by our lovely Nicole Morak. It is an awesome book, so you will win this book. We will send it to you. And now back to John. Let us know, who is the winner of the Tritium Hypothesis?
The first selection is SC Fry. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing the fry wrong. Congratulations.
Yay! Our first winner of the night, the Tritium Hypothesis, is yours. And we are going to collect your contact information in just a little bit. We will send you a message about that. So congratulations, SC Fry, the Tritium Hypothesis. All right, let's get back to the questions. Nelson, what is our next question of the evening? Has anyone been physically hurt during any of your sessions? My mind immediately went to the battleship when people hit their heads because there's low heights on the battleship. But has anybody been physically hurt? And I'm going to imagine that Leslie is probably thinking more along the lines of a spirit. Has anyone been hurt on an investigation?
I hate to answer every one of them, but I'm going to chime in.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody said anything, so there's awkward silence, so I decided to jump in. The first time I ever did the Ohio State Reformatory, aka the prison from Shawshank Redemption, she's in Mansfield, Ohio. The first time I walked into solitary confinement there, I walked by a certain cell and it felt like I got shivved in the stomach. Was it paranormal? I don't know, but that single spot has become kind of a hot spot over the years of like I have a video, or we have a video that we collected a while back on my former team of something that we is to this day unexplained. It's probably the best video clip I've been affiliated with, but that was caught that same night, and plus I kind of went through and told them how my family used to work there and who I told them my last name and everything. So they might actually know who I am and might not like me. So, but yeah, I walked down the hallway, felt like I got shivved, and I just turned around and ran out. And my stomach hurt for a few seconds, and then it just went away. Again, that could have just been, I don't know, bad food or indigestion or something. But that's probably the only thing I've ever happened that might be like that.
I like to go with the idea that you got shivved by a ghost. Next question.
Not the bad
And
pizza.
maybe we already said this, but how often do we investigate? So I will say for the Mordecai property, we are allowed to investigate 4 times per year. But as a team, we, on top of the Mordecai house and the Borden and the Tucker house in Raleigh, we also have had a collaboration with the Salisbury Historic Foundation in Salisbury, North Carolina, home of Cheerwine. And so this past year, we've investigated in Salisbury many, many times. And then we also try to take it outside of the state and go to further destinations. So we've been kind of all over the country. I know Nelson's been to his hometowns in Canada. So we investigate probably anywhere from, I would say, depending on the year, 8 to 15 times a year. And yeah, so lots of investigating. Nelson, I want to choose another prize winner.
Oh, sorry. Well, actually, I already brought this one up. So let's at least answer this before we choose another prize winner.
After this question, we're going to do another prize winner. How are your investigations received by the Parks and Rec staff? This is a great question. Do they believe your findings? Nelson, how would you answer that question?
I would probably say that the way we approach it is we actually never present anything as being evidence, right? Most of what we capture, we still continuously try to find answers to. So we never put anything in front of you all and say, hey, this here we think is paranormal. So we continuously go back to the locations and try to find alternate answers for it. And so I think, personally, I think they appreciate the fact that that's how we present our data. We don't present it as paranormal per se, but just data that we have not yet been able to find a good explanation for. So hopefully that answers the question.
All right, so the next prize, my friends. Another amazing book, and I have read this one, and it is awesome. Please Don't Call Me a Psychic, and again by Nikki Marak. Please Don't Call Me a Psychic, Stories from My Paranormal Life. So these are stories from Nikki's personal experience. Nikki also has a podcast, the PEEP podcast, so you should check that out if you get a chance. John, who is our winner of Please Don't Call Me a Psychic?
Our lucky winner for this particular prize is Charlene Jones. Congratulations, Charlene.
Jones. Charlene Jones, the winner of the awesome, very interesting book, Please Don't Call Me a Psychic. So Charlene, stick with us and we're going to collect your information so we can get that book out to you. All right, next question, Nelson. How do about seeing the Mordecai Park? Okay, so the Mordecai Park is open during the week and during the weekend. I think it's only closed on what, Mondays?
Mondays. I believe, yeah, Monday. But I mean,
Monday,
their
so it's
hours are
closed
on their website. But yes, it is available.
to
They
the
give guided
website.
tours.
Yes, they
They
do
have
guided
tours.
tours. Okay,
You go for it, Kelly.
go on now.
So they give guided tours. They
was
do have multiple
Oh my
events
God.
throughout the year. So it is, yeah, it is a public park. And actually, even it's just a beautiful park, even to just go take a stroll in. You could still walk to the gardens, even if the buildings aren't open. Yeah, it's just a beautiful park. We like to hang out there sometimes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Question
Let's
for
do another
John.
question, and then after this question, I'm going to do another prize. Question: can you go into more detail about batteries and spirits? Enjoyed the short answer the other day. I see Fred Fry was at our History Museum presentation on Thursday. So welcome back. And John, we're going to give this one over to you.
Yeah, so I'll try to recap the short answer. The short answer is no, we don't have a lot of data about batteries and spirits sapping the data. I've got an experiment going on where I'm keeping batteries at my purportedly, as far as I'm aware, not haunted house, at my own house. And I've been testing the batteries here as a control. And then I'm taking another set of identical batteries to purportedly haunted locations and testing them to see if spirits can take the energy of the battery. So far, I've only done that once, and the batteries were not drained in any way at either location. And so hopefully that's an experiment that's going to last for years to get enough data, but hopefully we can come up with something, either one way or the other. More detail, so you get a lot of times, you'll hear a lot of they say and it's been said and some say. That happens a lot in the paranormal, like where you'll hear like legends and stories, but not a lot of fact, if you will. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to establish like a baseline of fact in regard to the batteries. So like some say, whoever they are, that ghosts can kind of like take the energy from batteries and use them to manifest and do other things. I personally have never had that happen. I don't know if anybody else on the team has. But hopefully our experiments will come up with some kind of conclusion, whether it's plausible or not. But right now, unfortunately, I don't really have any other data yet myself to kind of dive any deeper into that. But hopefully one day I can give you a better answer than what I currently have.
So check in with us again next year. Maybe we'll have some more answers for that question. Nelson. All right, one more question, then prize. What's the most activity you've ever experienced at one time? What's the most activity you've ever experienced at one time? Who wants to take this one? I feel like this is a good Nelson or Nick kind of a question.
Okay, I'll take it. Actually, I always say when stuff happens, it's not like you see on TV. On TV, they're running around screaming, yelling, "What was that? Oh my gosh!" And just being silly. And more often than not, you don't even realize something has happened. It happens, and then you have to kind of think about it for a second and say, "Oh wow, that was interesting." But on very, very rare occasions, it does happen where it's just chaos. Very, very rare. And the one place that I can think of that happened was at the Moundsville Penitentiary in West Virginia, also known as West Virginia Penitentiary. And John Michael was actually there that night with me. There's three of us in, I think it was a psych ward. Was it a psych ward, John?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked it. I don't remember, unfortunately. Sorry.
But it just we were hearing what sounded like bedposts moving, just footsteps all around us. Just seems like for about 5 minutes there was just things all around us, just making noises and responding to things we were doing, and then it just stopped. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
There was a psych word, yes. It just hit me.
And I would probably go with St. Albans Sanitarium or probably the USS North Carolina battleship. Nelson, prize. All right.
I know.
John,
I know.
your next prize winner ready?
Ooh,
The next prize.
A lot of pressure going on here. It looks like our next prize. Well, I got the winner. I don't know what the prize is yet.
The next prize is going to be Gleanings from Long Ago. So this is actually the very popular Mordecai-inspired book, as it was written by Ellen Mordecai. It is her own memoirs of growing up here in Raleigh at the Mordecai Historic Park. So she talks about her stories from childhood and growing up. So I've read this book many, many times. I've highlighted passages and I actually use the book and different information that she shares about her time on investigations. So John, who is our winner of this book?
Looks like Aaron Soprano from YouTube. Congratulations.
Aaron Soprano, you are our winner. You are going to love this book. It just puts you in the history. And if you ever get a chance to come and visit the Mordecai property after reading this book, it just makes you feel so much more connected. So congratulations, Aaron Soprano. And Nelson, I want to do another prize. Dun, dun, dun. Look at that headline.
Sheesh, I'd already switched screens here. All right, another prize.
I'm going to make you work on it. Let's do another prize. A set of two, not one, but two Ghost Guild stemless glasses. I want these for myself. Nelson, you know what to get me for Christmas. Who, John, is our winner of these two stemless Ghost Guild glasses?
I was not prepared for them.
She caught me off guard.
It is Margaret Pendergraph. Congratulations for your glasses.
Yay! Margaret Pendergraph, you are our winner of two stemless glasses with the Ghost Guild logo on them. So again, if you've won a prize, stick around. We're going to collect your information and where we can send your prizes. All right, Nelson, I won't trick you again. Will you be doing any live investigations in the future? So I'm going to guess you mean live streamed investigations. Nelson, are we doing any live streamed investigations in the future?
Please say yes.
You want to? No.
Yeah, I enjoy doing them. They're a lot of fun.
Last year.
Personally, what I find so hard with it is that this is not like what you see on TV. So if you watch a lot of the TV shows, what we do is not like that. So, unless you're using a lot of the devices that light up and, that have false positives, a live stream investigation is just not that exciting. There's really nothing that is happening all the time to make it so people would want to watch live
Unless you're faking it.
Unless, yes, or embellishing or amplifying things that have happened. So for that reason, we did some for a little while, and then we just stopped. We tried last year for the Mordecai Festival, and it just wasn't. I don't know. It just wasn't interesting.
Maybe we could add like obstacle courses, or just put Nick like front and center the whole time.
Yeah, paranormal investigation Squid Game.
Yeah.
But if you are looking for an experience, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're about to say exactly what I was thinking.
The same thing.
So
if you are looking for an experience, we do at least once a year open an investigation to the public. So we've got one next, is it April? I forgot my dates. April. And we are going aboard the USS North Carolina battleship. So we will be announcing the details of that on the 1st of November. So just stay tuned on our Facebook page if you're interested in that.
Let's do one more question, and then we're going to do another prize.
Hey, it's Jenny.
Our dear friend, Jenny, we love you. Jenny,
Hey, Jenny.
Question. Who would you say is the most active spirit there?
Definitely
who's the most
John.
active spirit at the Mordecai house? I'm going to assume the Mordecai house. I don't know. I'm always surprised because I always feel like it's somebody different every time that we go. I get different feelings about different people. So sometimes I get who I believe is, unfortunately, I think is probably a slave from the past. I've gotten Martha Mordecai. I've gotten Ellen Mordecai. I feel like I just, for me personally, I feel like I come into contact with a lot of different people from the past. And a lot of times I don't feel that they're active spirits. I feel like it's more residual energy. So a lot of times I feel like I'm walking into the past. Which goes into the next one.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the
I saw that they kind of went together.
Are mostly residual or intelligent? I personally, I truly believe that it's both. I feel like we're getting a little bit of both. I feel like we've had experiences that, to me, I believe are just residual. We're like, I don't know, like time is, I don't know,
Right
folding
time, right
over
place.
itself. Yeah. Nelson, what do you think?
Oh yeah, right time, right place. It's hard to tell. I mean, there are some nights that we are at Mordecai and we walk away and absolutely like nothing happened. There are other nights where, you know, we've had things that we've not been able to explain. And it's odd too, because, you know, you'll be at the park and one time the activity is happening in the house, and then everywhere else in the park, nothing. And then the next time you go to the park and activities happening in the chapel, but nothing anywhere else. So it's almost like it I don't know. It's just really weird. Because last time we were at Mordecai, we had some things that happened in the chapel, but nowhere else.
So let's choose a prize winner. We have 3 prizes left. Nelson, let's tell them about the next prize while John gets it set up. Your choice of the Ghost Guild t-shirt. So you can see in the picture, we've got different styles of t-shirts. We have it in rainbow. We've got it in different colors. I personally have it in like rainbow, pink, white, black, pretty much every color. So the winner of a Ghost Guild t-shirt of your choice, John, who is our winner?
It is Miguel Arroyo. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your last name, but congratulations on your new t-shirt.
Miguel, you are going to have to sport your new t-shirt when I'm sure that you come and join us next year at the Battleship. So, Miguel, we are going to get some information from you after this. We're going to want to know shirt size, what color you want, what style you want. So stick with us. Congratulations, Miguel. And Nelson, for sake of time, I want to go ahead and do the next prize drawing, which is for something I'm very excited about, a 1-year membership for 2 to the North Carolina Museum of History, which, y'all, as a Downton Abbey girl, I'm very excited because they are currently featuring a program called Dressing the Abbey, in which they have like different like costumes from the actual show from Downton Abbey. So very, very exciting. If I wasn't a team member, I would be trying to get this for myself. John, who is our winner for the History Museum prize?
I am, again, was totally unprepared, and I kind of want to say myself that I've won. So congratulations, me. Give me just a split second.
Make sure Kelly's not putting in fake names here.
If you give me $20, I will give you the response. No, congratulations to Casey Wilson. Congratulations.
Casey Wilson.
I'm a little
Casey
jealous. I will
Wilson.
not.
Very exciting. All right, so let's take another couple of questions and then we will announce our grand prize winner of the night. And let me say that if you have already won a prize this evening, if you have been the lucky winner of a book or the glasses or a t-shirt, you are still eligible for our grand prize, which is going to be an investigation with the Ghost Guild at the Mordecai Historic Park in the year 2022, this coming year. But before we get there, let's take a couple more questions. Nelson, choose a question for us. Have you ever thought you didn't get anything, but then review the info and had things show up? Oh, yes. Let's go. I bet Nick has a good one for this. Nick, what do you say?
Yeah, that's the whole premise behind EVP or electronic voice phenomena. It's when you run your voice recorder and you ask questions, you don't hear anything at the time, and then you go back and listen to it later and you have things responding to your questions. And same thing with stationary video. Obviously, you're running video all night and you're not watching it. You don't see it until you get home. I mean, there's been nights where the location is completely dead, and then you go home and you start reviewing the data, and there's stuff happening left and right. The place I mentioned earlier, what I consider one of the more active places in the area, the first place I ever did was a prime example of that. There'd be nights where nothing would happen. You go home and you get this EVP that's just crystal clear and responding to a question you ask, or you crack a joke and you have a little girl giggling and saying it's funny. So, yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, and I mean that's the biggest. Like a lot of people think what we do is basically just go into a room and then we leave and we're done. Every time we do an investigation, let's say you're investigating for 8 hours, and during that entire 8 hours, you have multiple audio recorders going, you have multiple video cameras going. Each one of those, you have to take the time when you get back home to review all of that. So you're reliving that investigation multiple times on over. So it takes a lot of time and patience to review all of that data. And yeah, there's a lot of times we've left locations and then we review data. We'd leave, we're like, nothing happened. We didn't feel anything. We didn't, nothing happened. And when we review the data, and lo and behold, I could think of the Bergen Wright House being one of those. Kelly as an example, when we left, and then we listened to the audio and we think at least that we've captured a very clear EVP. But yeah, so definitely.
And just as a follow-up too, I think one of the things that sets us apart from a lot of teams is we don't stop there either. We continue, like we try to return to places constantly, and we try to recreate some of the things that happen with our data using the scientific process. And I think that's what separates us from a lot of teams also. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah. All right, let's
Here's
do
a question
another
probably
question.
for you, Kelly. We've actually had 2 questions that touched on this topic. So yeah, I'm bringing this one up.
So how many times have you guys just left the house because it's too much? So earlier in the night, you heard my personal story about having to leave the Mordecai house because I was just overwhelmed with emotion. And I've had that happen probably 3 other times. One was at St. Albans Sanitarium in Virginia. We were having fun. I was sitting up in a room. It's actually referred to as the suicide room because there are documented 4 deaths that occurred by suicide in that space. Was perfectly fine. We were getting a lot of stuff coming through the spirit box during a double-blind experiment, and out of nowhere just got hit with just a wall of anxiety. I knew that it was not my anxiety. It was a a presence that was trying to attach to me. And so I actually had to kind of stand up and say, you have to back off of me, you're too close. And I kind of walked out of the space. It left me. And then unfortunately for the rest of the night, nothing would come near me. So yes, I've definitely had experiences where had to leave a space or had to leave a house in order to be able to just kind of separate. And for me, myself, as an empath, I do a lot of sage cleansings, a lot of smudging, a lot of very specific personal prayer and mantras in order to be able to cleanse myself, to try to avoid things following me home. It has happened. It's happened to Nelson as well. I know. So these things do happen. So we have to be very cautious. So, okay. So that
was the other question I had there. Yeah, but it was related to what you were answering. But I just thought you might want to take this one.
So this is from a mama. Hi, Mom. So Becky Wood McConkey says, do you ever schedule an investigation on the month and day that something tragic happened at a location to see if that makes a difference in activity? That is a great question, Mom. I'm proud of you. Good job. I love my mama. Who wants to take this one?
I could answer part of that. And using the example, one of the clips that you all heard tonight as part of the program, when I was on the second floor of the Mordecai house and I heard those thumps and then what sounded like a voice yelling, "Get up," to me. I've definitely got the date that happened and the time that it happened, because I would like to test to see if that is residual in nature. If I am there on that day, that date, time next year, will I hear the same thing? So yes, it is. It's good to have. I mean, anytime you have any reports of activity, it's good to capture the date, the time, so that goes into the trying to find a good answer for what happened for that. So, and unless anyone else has an answer for that too.
I think part of the research that Christina and I do is to try to come up with those dates and times so that we can maybe find some correlation between activity that may happen at a place and anything that historically could have taken place that might be somehow related to that. So we look to find those dates and times so that the team has them when they go out.
All right. And all right, let's do one more question, Nelson, and then we're going to do our grand prize drawing.
All right. Let's see. Try to. You want to? I'm trying to find that. It was asked actually way earlier on. I think you indicated you wanted to answer that, which was, do you ever get scared?
I thought it was gonna be the question, is Michael single? And the answer is yes.
What? I mean, I guess, yeah.
Well, since we talked about going on the battleship, let's take this here.
What has your most disturbing experience been on the battleship? And I think this actually goes, for me personally, this actually goes really well, Rob, with another question that I think I saw in the comments, which is, are any of our clips up on YouTube? And so if you look on YouTube on our channel, be sure to like us and follow us on YouTube. You will see a clip from the battleship. It's myself and one of our former co-founders, and we are in the sick bay. And that night, and every night we've ever been in the sick bay on the battleship, but this night in particular, I was hearing like thumps, and it sounded like something like banging on pipes. And so we started asking, can you come in here? Can you make that noise again? And from right behind me, I heard the bed springs of one of the beds in the sick bay go boing. And it kind of freaked me out for a second. I was like, dude, did you hear that? And we're like, good job. Can you do that again, even louder? And I mean, it just immediately went boing, like as if somebody was literally just jumping on the bed spring. And when you're in pitch blackness and you know that there's nothing like nothing in there with you that should be making that kind of noise, to be like hitting the bed like hard enough to be able to make the springs go that hard, it was freaky. So for me, that was my battleship experience that really, really gave me the goosebumps, but also makes me look forward to going back every year, to see if I can get that to do it again. Anybody else?
I can add one more. I can add one more thing. It's not really just, well, depends on how you look at it, because very expensive piece of equipment got destroyed. But my dear friend Kathy was holding her camcorder, and she had her camcorder, and they're having things interact with some of their equipment. And finally said, "Okay, we're leaving. You know, do you want to do one more thing or anything to say before we go?" And her camera just shut off, and it's never worked ever since. Like on cue. So was it paranormal? I don't know, but it's pretty, I know she was not happy because now her camera's broke.
Yeah. I know personally I could tell a million stories about the battleship. I do say if you get the chance to come on an investigation with us at the ship, it is always an interesting time. But for sake of time,
do we have one of those coming up soon?
We do. Well, we have one. All of the spaces are already filled for our November investigation, by people who have been waiting for 2 years to be able to go, because we've had to reschedule it and reschedule it and reschedule it because of COVID. So we do have one coming up in November. So be on the lookout. We might post some of our some of the data that we collect there. But we do have another one that will be coming up in April 9th, I believe, the week before Easter. So be on the lookout, like and follow our Facebook page and our YouTube page, and maybe you'll have a chance to come with us. But
Night of the Azaleas Festival.
Let's do our final and grand prize drawing. If you have asked a question tonight, again, you are still in the running for this drawing. I'm very excited about this. It's one of my favorite things is being able to invite someone to come with us on our investigations, see what we do, and get to experience this with us. It is an investigation at the Mordecai Historic Park with the Ghost Guild. So, John, work your magic. I know you've got all those names in there. You've been diligently.
John's muted, by the way. But even before John announces the winner, I do want to make sure that as we will close tonight's program, we will be playing credits along with some of the outtakes from the filming of this. So make sure to stick around for that.
Very embarrassing. All right, John, announce our grand prize.
Do you want to give me a drum roll, Kelly? High quality production. It is. Congratulations to Allison Miller. You have won our grand prize. Congratulations.
Allison Miller, we're looking forward to having you come with us to the Mordecai Historic Park next year. We will hunt some ghosts. Maybe we'll get a pizza beforehand. We'll see. If you've won a prize, again, stick around. We're going to collect your contact information so we can get some information out to you and collect details to get you your prizes. I believe that several of our investigators here will stay on if you would like to ask more questions. But I just want to take the opportunity to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. There were a lot of things that you could be doing tonight, and we were really honored that you stayed here with us, and we hope you enjoyed the program. Nelson, any final words?
So we'll go ahead and play the credits, but then as Kelly indicated, we will stay on. If there are other questions, we will answer them after the credits. So appreciate everyone coming by tonight. And as we actually close another Halloween season for us and the annual Haunted Festival, we hope that you've enjoyed the evening exploring with us. We want to thank all of you for joining us and for following us all year long. Don't forget, again, as we mentioned, that tickets for a Battleship North Carolina investigation in spring of 2022 go on sale November 1st. We can't sign off without thanking the partners who contributed to this event. We've included their names in the end credits that will soon be displayed on your screen, along with some outtakes from us recording this event. We owe a huge thank you to these partners, the team at Mordecai Historic Park and the City of Raleigh Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Department for their contributions of time, research, and access. We're always proud to be a partner in the work that they do, helping people experience this location and teaching about the role it played in history. We hope that people enjoy it for years to come. So here's to a Halloween filled with mystery, history, and intrigue. On behalf of the Ghost Guild, we're signing off, but we hope that you enjoy the following outtakes before you sign off too. Ghost Light out.
During one of our investigations, I was in Andrew Johnson's birthplace when I heard what can best be... Oh, I'm starting. Holy boy.
Co-member? Jesus. One evening, while investigating the Andrew Johnson house, oh God. One night, while investigating the Andrew Johnson's birthplace, of Andrew Johnson, I'm gonna try again. One night, while investigating the birthplace of... For myself, when I heard... You're gonna do an outtake, it's just gonna be...
Okay.
I feel so bad that you have to like watch this and like try to figure out where to cut it.
Whoosha!
Up a little bit because I know I'm taller than you are. I want to make sure I have at least like 2 to 3 inches above my head.
That was like a perfect, yeah. So yeah.
Okay. Now you've heard it multiple times now. I said now, you've heard it multiple. The plane, the plane. Oh, that's a Cessna 548. I'm sorry, I'm pulling a Nick. Maybe I can. I did.
A love for history, science, and the unexplained.
Kelly, that was so pleasant. That was so nice.
Take 2. Hopefully no bugs will fly into my face. And at the time, I'm gonna start over because a bug just flew into my face. At the age of 3, Mordecai III, grieving the loss of little Moses. Oh, I said Margaret. Margaret, Martha. Okay, one more time, and I'm not up this time. Take 1011.
At the same time, another device that we had... I did it again. That is when I heard coming up...
We're going to start off from there.
Okay, all right. It sounded weird, but did that make any sense at all, what I just said? And
There are many people who think that strange balls of light caught on still images are... It's my first flub. Or I was doing so well. Whoops. Okay. Maybe. As excited as we would get for... as excited as we would get for it to be. Okay. As excited as we would get for it to be.
All right, well, thanks for joining us and have fun. I don't know. And scene.
Unmute everybody here.
My mama's gonna kill me.
Why is she gonna kill you?
You said bad words, yeah.
I'm absolutely
I'm like a pirate.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for joining us tonight. So did we have any other questions? Let's see here. Make sure that we have the opportunity to answer everyone. So the problem also is that I don't know who is still on and if we're answering to someone that is still watching. So if you are still watching and you have a question that was not answered, if you can go ahead and ask it again in the comments, that way we'll go ahead and answer it. Let's see, I need to leave. How do I get my info to you all?
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about, the private chat.
Yeah. Maybe we can drop you a Facebook Messenger?
Last year, we'd asked folks to reach out to us, either via Facebook Messenger or email.
Just send us your address. John has trained several carrier pigeons, and we will be affixing your prizes to their little legs.
Oh, that's so outdated. We use drones now.
Yeah, we use drones.
I actually use drones in the shape of like pigeons. Like I kind of, yeah.
So
it's if you believe birds are real.
we have a list of all of the winners that we have written up. But Nelson, if you feel like it would be best for them to send a private message so that we're not putting their contact information where other people from the public might be able to get to it, that might be best.
Yeah. And the issue I think sometimes is, the names are different. So if they send us a message and share with us who they were on the feed, at least that's how we did it last year, and it worked okay.
Yeah, so just drop us a message. Yeah, either you can email it to us or you can drop it in Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, if you go to our Facebook page, there's an option to send a message.
And can we also put the email address for the page in the chat? Is that possible, Nelson?
You mean our email address?
Yeah, the Ghost Guild email address.
Yeah, I could do that.
I know another tricky thing about us reaching out to you is like sometimes like certain privacy settings prevent messages from us to you, like as individuals, and so like you can message like groups like the Ghost Guild a lot easier that we can't reach out to you. So that's just another heads up too. Maybe a lot easier for you to reach out to the actual Ghost Guild Facebook page.
Yeah, that, and I've just gone ahead and put our email address on screen.
Yeah.
So, South Carolina or SC Fry, Charlene, Aaron, Margaret, Miguel, Casey, Allison. Please email us and we will get you your prizes and set up the prizes.
So we do have actually quite a few people still posting questions. So y'all want to go ahead and go through those now?
Sure.
Yes.
This was asked earlier. We didn't get a chance to do it.
Graveyard investigations? Sorry, what, Nelson?
I was just going to say this one was posed earlier. We didn't get a chance to go to it. So.
Okay. Do you guys do graveyard investigations like the Lawson family murder? So Nelson and I have been known to go sit in some graveyards. Not necessarily as, like a team investigation, but just because we're,
It's where they hang out.
I have a lot of questions about this.
So I know one time we did an investigation, kind of just a spur of the moment investigation. There's a homestead site over, it was near the Eno River. And we had to, I don't know if you remember this was many years ago now. Yeah, the Cablands. And so I know we went out and kind of found like a area that we think was like the old family home site, like graveyard area. And it was really neat because I remember some of the equipment that we had out there kind of in the middle of nowhere even was lighting up, and definitely a creepy kind of feeling in that space.
Yeah. And I like to go to visit. I like to, when we're investigating a location and, we've researched the history, I personally like to go to the sites where, the people in that research, where they're buried. So show my respects, before the investigation or after. But that's just me.
Have you heard of any hauntings in High Point, North Carolina? High Point, North Carolina.
Any answers on that?
I think the closest I personally have ever investigated to High Point was not near High Point. So sorry. No, it was a private residence in, what's the name of that town? It's up 77, I think. I'm sure that narrows it down. It's not near High Point, though. Sorry, I'll just be quiet now.
I know when I was in college, I heard some things about the university there. But, every college has a resident spirit, right? So I haven't done any investigation into the history behind anything that could cause those legends to spring up, though.
The closest thing to High Point is when I grew up, like all my friends always used to talk about Lydia's Bridge. But Lydia's Bridge, I think, is more in Greensboro than High Point. But yeah, I can't think of anything in High Point.
Where's Corner's Folly?
Kernersville.
It's not too far from High Point, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. It's definitely closer than Raleigh is, but like in High Point, I can't think of any places that I personally have ever heard. I mean, those are the two places I would say is Corner's Folly and Lydia's Bridge. The two places I could think of that would be any kind of definition of close to High Point.
So we have two questions that are rather similar. So I'm going to display the first one, and then I'll display the second one, and then I think we could answer them together. The first one here is from Charlene. Kelly, are you still reading?
So can you mention a bit more? Yeah, can you? Sorry, I started reading it to myself instead of reading it out loud. Can you mention a bit more about how something attached itself to you? Nelson, I make you tell this story over and over and over again just because I just find it fascinating. Nelson, tell us your story about bringing home, was it Lily?
Allegedly, potentially. Who knows? We don't know for sure. No, So we investigated Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, which is in West Virginia, and one of the rooms is allegedly haunted by a little girl, and the name of the little girl was Lily. And one of the things that I like to do when I'm actually asking questions as part of like an EVP session is I try to relate with who I think I might be trying to converse with. And so in this particular case, speaking with a child, the only thing I felt I could relate with is by bringing up the fact that I have, a daughter, and I shared the stuff that she enjoys doing, and kind of try to ask, what is it you like to do? Like, my daughter likes to do this or play this game or things like that. And I mean, it's, you just don't want to, like, you wouldn't want someone to come up to you in a grocery store and ask you a whole bunch of questions, right? So I like to first share information about me, then ask questions. I'm kind of a give and take. So in this particular instance, I was asking those questions. I was talking about my daughter, and I left. I didn't get anything on my recorders, but when after coming back home, my daughter started waking up at night, and like in fear. Like, she was obviously very, very scared, and like, she wouldn't even talk about it. She just had this, she was crying, and she just had this look of fear. It took several nights of this happening the same time every night for me to finally be able to start getting her to open up a little bit. And first, she told me that there was a girl in her room. And so again, this continued, and it wasn't until, again, a few days later that I was able to ask, and get an answer to, well, does this girl have a name? And her response to me was Illy. And that's when the light kind of turned on for me. It's like, this happened immediately after coming back from Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and I was talking, about my daughter to Lily, and then here you go. Now, did she follow me home? There's no way for me to prove that, and I wouldn't even insinuate that, but it certainly is odd. I did get some sage. I saged the room. I had a brief little conversation saying it was not an invitation for you to come, and it stopped. And it stopped that night. And my daughter had no idea I'd done anything. So it's just kind of weird that for all those nights she would wake up at that time of night and just in fear. And then as soon as I sage the room and I have a conversation, say, you have to go back, it stopped. And with her having no knowledge of all of that. So it was interesting, but I don't know if that's an attachment. I wouldn't say that's an attachment, but that's the story Kelly wanted me to share with y'all.
I just love that story.
Let's see here.
All right. Have you guys done any investigation at the Carbonton Dam? I have not. And I think you had asked an earlier question about the dam in Sanford. So I'm guessing that the Carbonton Dam is the dam that's in Sanford, North Carolina. We have done investigations in Sanford at the Temple Theater, but we have not done any investigations at the dam in Sanford. But now I want Tracy and Christina to look that up so we know. And feel free to put in the chat if you've had any experiences there that we should know about.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what the deal with the dam is. I've never heard of that place before.
I've heard of it, but that's because it's like abandoned and you can take cool photos there. That's the only reason that I know what it is.
I think it was actually on the news not too long ago. They did an article about it.
Mm-hmm. Probably.
So Miguel wants to know if we have a website. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go for it.
No, you take it, Nelson. My voice is tired.
So we don't actually have a website with merchandise. We haven't really sold any merchandise before, but if you, depending on what you're interested in, feel free again to message us. I'm about to place an order for the t-shirts for the winners tonight, so I could certainly add to that, and we can coordinate offline.
I'm telling you, Nelson, we should do a Patreon.
Here, John.
Oh,
John,
Crystal.
John is our biggest skeptic in the group. John, talk about your skepticism.
Yeah.
Talk about how you don't believe in ghosts.
Yeah, so I think every team needs somebody on their team that doesn't, believe everything or take everything at face value. And I think everybody on our team has some level of skepticism. In fact, recently I was chastised because I called myself the skeptic, and I've tried to change my language. And I'm glad that I have to change my language. I think skepticism is a healthy way to look at the world. But yes, that would probably be me. I had a conversation with Nelson recently about how we've all had to change our language and how we approach things. And I would like to think that I am always there in people's minds whenever they tell a story or make a claim, because I am always the person who's going to be like, so tell me more about that. I've got some questions for you. so yeah, no, I think it's safe to say that would probably be me.
So do you investigate private residences or mostly more public historic sites? I'm going to make Michael answer this question because he has the answer to it.
Answer the question, Michael.
What?
I mean, we paid you to be here.
I guess. Did I get paid? All I've done is edit a bunch of videos the last month and gotten little things.
You were paid
anyway.
exposure. We were totally
okay,
paying you
great,
exposure.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Everything that I've done with the Ghost Guild has been public historic sites, or with the city of Salisbury, for example, a bunch of the historic societies, properties and places like that might not be open to the public, but are still, more historical. I've never done a private residence with the Ghost Guild or, at all, really. So yeah, I guess I don't know if you guys have. I think Nick's done a couple in his spare time, and everybody's kind of done their own thing before the Ghost Guild with private residences. But as a whole, it's mainly just fun historic sites.
Yeah.
I would say that's absolutely our focus is public historical sites. We may do the very much occasional private site, but usually there's an extraordinary reason to do that. That is definitely not our focus, though, unfortunately.
Yeah, we make exceptions, especially if we're talking about a private residence that has a lot of history, or not just private residences, but we really enjoy historical locations, and sometimes those happen to be private residences, but we don't typically just do residential investigations. We try to help historical societies bring awareness to their preservation efforts, try to tell the story and of those locations. So that's typically what we enjoy doing the most.
A lot of private residences can be very risky for many reasons, obviously legal reasons. You never know who you're dealing with. You can interview them as much as you want, but then you're in their house and they can act totally different. It's too unpredictable, and too many bad things can happen on many levels with private residences. I've had my own experiences in the past, bad experiences in private residences. So I kind of shy away from them myself as well.
This isn't a question, but I did want to bring that up because yes, we would love to have the ability to do that, that location. Unfortunately, we've reached out, but there was no interest there. So maybe in the future, who knows? We're hopeful. And I have a similar question actually in regards to location. I think this one came from Charlene, and it had to do with the Page Walker Hotel. I have spoken with people there, and there was no interest there as well. It is hard sometimes to convince organizations because I think they get approached by a lot of different teams that are more on the thrill seeker side. We'd like to think we're a little different because we do focus so much on the history and doing the research and
Strictly
and the
no
preservation. We have some fun, but I think that unfortunately, muddies the waters a little bit for us sometimes. But we still continue, still reach out every once in a while to try to share with them what we've done with other locations and other partnerships we've had, in hopes that eventually that will change and that we will have an opportunity to investigate those locations. So we have a question here from
right down the street. I was going to say, I grew up right down the street from the Page Walker, what is now the Page Walker Hotel. And I used to walk by there as a kid, and I always wanted to spy there because I had always heard as a kid growing up that it was haunted. So maybe someday.
Yeah. So to answer this question, Kelly, if you want to read it, I could answer.
So how can one join the investigation of the Mordecai house? I've always loved the home and would love to get inside at nights. Jose, I think you might have joined us a little later on in the program. So once a year on this night, the Saturday before Halloween, as part of the Historic Mordecai Annual Fall Festival, the Haunted Festival, we do a prize drawing for someone to win the opportunity to do an investigation with us at the Mordecai house. So we already have announced our winner for tonight. That winner has already been drawn. So unfortunately, you're going to have to wait until next year's program to win your opportunity to come with us on an investigation, because it is a closed site. We are the only investigation team that is allowed to investigate the Mordecai property. But please, please, please come back next year and maybe you'll be the person to win that prize. But if not, then you should come to the battleship, because that's fun too.
Battleships are real.
Margaret,
well, the battleship's great. Even I'm sorry, even if there is no activity, I mean, there's nights when we go on the battleship and we have no activity. There are other nights when it's, for lack of a better word, it's crazy active. But even on the nights where there is no activity, just being able to walk the ship at night, have it to yourself. I mean, it's huge historic structure. It's an experience that I enjoy every time. And I've been on that ship many, many, many nights. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
No, that was a great way to say it. When did you start believing in the paranormal? And I want to hear from Christina, because you don't get to answer as many things as one of our stories.
We paid you big bucks too. We need some answers.
I guess when I was a lot younger, probably 7 or 8, my parents always bought me local lore about haunted history, but I think the kind of turning point was when I visited Gettysburg. It just had a weird feel to it, and just hearing all the narratives that surround that land. There's just an air of mystery to it.
Cool.
Gettysburg, incredible.
Tracy, when did you first start believing in the paranormal?
Probably when I was a preschooler. I remember my very first experience being around the time I was 4. And there was a visitor in the house that no one else could see. But later on, it showed up in some really old turn-of-the-century family pictures that I hadn't seen, that my aunt actually brought down from another residence. But I recognized the person in them. And I guess that was probably when I decided there might be more to things.
John, when did you decide that ghosts weren't real?
To Michael's point, I have definitely I've had a journey. It's funny because I don't know how to put this, but the less I believe, the more involved I get. I don't really know how that works out, but I have been on all sides of the journey, and where I'm at one day, I'm at a totally different place the next day. So yeah, Michael, I hate you. But it's not about belief, right? Because science is true whether you believe it or not, and so that's kind of like what I'm about, is like the scientific journey to prove or disprove the paranormal, right? And we're not there yet on either side, and so I'm really excited what the future brings about our investigations and about what we'll learn in either direction that we go. I think it's going to be a cool journey either way.
Thanks, John. So Crystal asks, do you think you'll be able to get back to the October tour in Salisbury next year if the world has started getting itself back together? Nelson, can you speak to this?
We better.
We have not scheduled that yet, but the plan is to have the presentation that we had planned to do at the beginning of this month, likely more around the May timeframe. I think we want to try to target it after the Cheerwine Festival. So, but yeah, stay tuned. We'll be posting that information to our Facebook page as soon as we know the details. I know Kelly wants that Cheerwine.
I love Cheerwine.
I miss doing these in person because I feel like this is great, like doing stuff on video, but it's so much better to like interact with people and like talk with people and communicate in person. It really stinks, this whole COVID thing. Should just go away. but yeah, I miss it, man.
Oh, Nick's probably going to want to answer that one.
Yeah, I'll take this one.
So do you guys watch any of the popular ghost TV shows like Ghost Hunters, Guilty Pleasures?
Okay. I'm going to try to halfway get on my soapbox here just because I want to keep it short. I will fully admit that, I mean, I've been interested in the paranormal ever since literally I was born. And from childhood, I heard stories and stuff about stuff that's happened to my family. And then watching Ghost Hunters when it came out kind of inspired me to actively go find the local team and go out and do what they're doing. So I will give them credit for that. However, I think as time goes on, I always tell people, if you want to see what real investigating is like, watch the first 2 seasons of Ghost Hunters, because they never caught anything. And it was like pulling teeth to get Jason to say something was haunted. They used to make fun of him because he would never call anything haunted. That doesn't make for good TV because it's boring. So what do? They bring in the friend that they've had for 20 years, the good-looking girl who they've known for 20 years, who's also, by the way, an actress, but they don't tell you that, to come onto the show, and they start getting full-body apparitions, all kinds of crazy stuff, and they've even been caught on live TV faking things. So, and that just kind of opened the floodgates for other shows to come on and just be absolutely false ghost adventures.
What?
Yeah. Anyways, every time I see one of these shows now, I want to throw my TV out the window, just because it's so just overdone and just not what it's like in real life. I haven't watched any of the current shows, so they might be a little bit different, but
everybody's like, no.
Yeah, I don't.
Fun. They're fun for fun's sake.
Yes.
Entertainment purposes, yes.
Yeah, entertainment purposes. I'll say one more thing. What was this? Probably 10 years ago, John Michael and I, we did and a couple other people involved in our old team, that we did a presentation called As Seen on TV, ? Where we compared our investigations to popular places that you see on TV, like Moundsville Penitentiary, Waverly Hills Sanitarium, Ohio State Reformatory, Bobby Mackey's Music World. We compare our investigations to what you see on TV, and like perfect example, we did Waverly Hills, and came away with nothing. And you look at Ghost Adventures, they recorded 22 EVPs. I think Zach Baggins saw his doppelganger or something like that. Saw a doppelganger. I'm like, oh my God.
Fighting words.
Come on, seriously.
Zach Baggins did nothing wrong.
Was that before or after he was possessed?
I think it was before, actually.
Listen, the demon took his vision and he has to wear glasses now, okay? I don't know why you don't believe him.
I mean, I get it. It's entertainment. Do your thing, but anybody that wants to take this seriously, those shows are trash.
And I'd agree with Nick. Like, when I was younger, I watched them, and it was a good, like, it was an inspiration, kind of like Nick said, to where, like, I want to do this. And then eventually meeting Nelson and Kelly and getting involved. But, so yeah, I would credit them for being, like, a jumping off point, I guess, to be like, oh, this is neat. I want to do this in real life. But once again, like the ones that I watched, we're back like the very beginning stages of those shows where things weren't obviously insane. Yeah, that's about all. I haven't watched them in years.
My theory on this is if we ever did actually see a full-bodied apparition with all of us present and all the equipment going off, the last thing we're going to do is scream and run. We want that recorded. Like, that's not... We might
John would still say it was,
but we're not going to leave the scene, right?
I mean, I'll give a hot take. Like, I genuinely, like, I've never talked to Zach Baggins, and I've got a friend that knows some of the TV show personalities, and Nick and I know like a TV show personality. And I think that at the end of the day, I think they are truly genuine people. Like, I don't think they go out and make these TV shows and they're like, hey, let's just fake a bunch of stuff and get real rich. Like, I don't think that's their goal. And I think if you had a conversation with them, they think that they were legitimate. But they are there to entertain, and they are there to experience the paranormal. And there's nothing wrong with like experiencing, like if you're just out to experience. We are kind of after a different thing, and that is like we're trying to understand the paranormal, not just like run around and be scared in like an insane asylum. And like I think that the way that they do things lends itself to becoming scared. And when you have all these cameras on scene and you're constantly given scripts and things to do, I think that just naturally lends itself to running around screaming and being scared. So I think that they think they're genuine, but that's just the power of the human mind to be able to trick itself, right? And so yeah, I don't know, man. I think they're genuine people, but they're still doing stuff inappropriately. There's a right way to do an investigation and an incorrect way. And unfortunately, investigations can come across as not super entertaining if you're watching. I think it's super entertaining to be a part of, but it doesn't necessarily make great TV. When I learned that like all of Pawn Stars is fake, like all their interactions were not real, right? Like they're all set up and pretend. That made me understand that reality TV is just, it's all scripted. It's all like prearranged, and that changed my life. And that's kind of what those paranormal shows are. Like they're pretty much largely scripted for the most part. And that's kind of disappointing, but hot take.
So I think we're going to go ahead and take the last question here, and then we'll go ahead and close for the night, officially, this after program party. But the question is from Miguel, and I don't know what happened to Kelly. Let's add Kelly back to the stream there. Do your pets seem weird when you get home after assuming an investigation?
My pets
are always weird.
Okay, so do your pets behave differently after you return from an investigation? How's that?
So here's my response, which may be different from everybody else's. We are not veterinarians, and we don't. I don't know why my dog acts the way he does on any given day. And like we were in a recent investigation where the owner of a house was saying her cat was doing weird things, and she had an inclination that may be a sign of paranormal activity. And I don't think any of us are professionals when it comes to feline behavior. And so why a cat acts a certain way is, at least to me, is a mystery. Like, I don't understand like why the cat was wanting to jump into a cabinet and act strange. And so, I've never had my dog act any weirder than he already is. I know a lot of people will say like animals sometimes can like stare into corners, or they may see things that aren't there. But my personal response is, we would probably want to reach out to a professional and ask like a veterinarian or something, like why dogs act, or cats, or whatever kind of pet you have, would act in a certain way in any given particular situation. I don't know if anybody else has any kind of different response.
There's a lot of reporting done about animals like right before an earthquake, and how they and if you've ever been in an earthquake and you have animals, you've probably seen this because it does happen a lot, where they can sort of sense things happening before they happen. So I don't know that we can rule something like that out being a cause for why an animal might act strange. It might just be coincidental. I would love to get some data around if an animal is acting strange and something maybe seismic or whatever was going on for John's favorite earthquake scenario. Something like that could be correlated, right? So there are a lot of factors that could be not related to the coincidence that we were also at a location that could cause an animal to respond weirdly, or maybe something followed us home. Like that could happen too, right?
Kelly, are you okay?
I'm gonna tell my demon story. I'm gonna get fast.
Okay, Zach Baggins, you're on.
So my house is very like love, peace, hippie energy. I got all my gemstones and all my, my hippie stuff. And one night, speaking of like these paranormal TV shows, I have no idea. It was some kind of a documentary, and it was a documentary about like demons and demonology that was on the TV. And the funny thing is, I wasn't actually paying attention to it because I was sitting there doing case notes for work, and my dog's sitting next to me on the couch. But this show about demons and demonology is on the TV. And on the TV show, they started saying the name of a demon, which you're not supposed to do. Like that's kind of one of those things in the paranormal field. No, you're not supposed to name a demon out loud. But I'm not even really paying attention to this show, but they're naming this demon. And all of a sudden I find myself saying the name of the demon, but it's like I'm not the one saying it, but it's coming out of my mouth. So in my own house, I'm saying the name of this demon, and my dog, which is somewhere around here, a little Chihuahua Jack Russell mix. My dog is the chillest, cutest little dog in the world. And all of a sudden he started just freaking out, and I was like, what? I was like, what is wrong with you, dude? And so I like feel this energy shift in my house, but I'm like, it's this show, like it's just this show. Like I'm just, I'm reading into it because my dog's freaking out and the show is on. I found myself saying this demon's name. So I take my dog out for a walk, and he does his business, and we're coming back up the stairs to my house. He will not go in the house, y'all. He will not. He is like literally like pulling away from me, and like just my dog has never acted this way. And I'm like, all right, that's a little freaky. I'm gonna just take him for another walk. So I take my dog for another walk. We go back up to the house. Same thing. He starts to go up the stairs. He looks in the house, and he's like starts pulling back and pulling away from me. And he's just like crying. And so I'm like, well, I gotta go in my house. So I pick him up and I put him inside, and the door to the back of the house where my back porch is, I had left cracked to get some fresh air in. And he literally hightails it through the house, out the back door, and is like hiding on the back porch. And I can feel the energy in my house, and it is dark and heavy. And I'm just like, damn, y'all, there's a demon in my house. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to deal with this. And so I got my sage. I saged myself first with my mantra, this is a house of light and love. And I went through the entire house, one room at a time, getting the corners of the house. And I am just feeling this energy. Like I'm just like moving this energy up and around clockwise through the house and out the back door. And like the funniest thing, as soon as I did this and I like pushed it out the back door, my dog comes like, kind of comes up to me. He like looks around, and then he comes back in the house, jumps on the couch as if nothing ever happened. That's my demon dog story.
And it all started with Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice.
Shh, Nelson, now look what you've done.
The television from that instance is actually in Zach Bagans' Haunted Museum. Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right.
Say,
well,
our last Salisbury trip, my dogs didn't like how I smelled when I came home. They were like weirded out by that. They didn't like that at all.
It was pretty hot that day.
Yeah, it may have been a personal issue. I'm not sure.
Was it all the pizza that we ate that night, or?
Yeah, but I didn't.
We were in the
no,
annex.
did
Remember? We were in the annex to take pictures, and it was smoldering.
And it was 9,000 degrees.
That day. Yeah.
Yeah.
You see how sweaty we are in the picture.
I didn't like how it smelled either, but I don't think that was correlated there.
All right. Well, we are at the 3 hours and 6 minute mark. So let's go ahead and close this. We do again appreciate everyone staying later with the other questions. Glad we were able to get them all. And I hope you continue following us. We will be posting, actually, this video will be available on YouTube and Facebook. So if you want to come back and watch it again, share it with your friends. We'd certainly appreciate it. All right. Thank you. And actually, Ghost Guild members, if you can stay on after I end the broadcast, I'd appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I love
Thank
you.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Happy Halloween.